Hi class, this is Robin again. Hopefully this will work. And this is the chapter 1 talk through. So the test for your first test will include the introduction and chapter 1. So if you have your book, open it to page 2 and we'll start with the boundaries of adolescence. So when I think of boundaries, I think of fences, so I'm not really sure how that applies to adolescence, but I thought of it as a timeline in life where birth is at the beginning, death is at the end, and adolescence is right in the middle. And the two lines signify the beginning and the end of adolescence. So the two lines are the boundaries, and everything that happens with adolescence is in the middle. Another way to look at it is looking at the chart on page 3, when adolescence begins, when adolescence ends, but there's all these different perspectives of different parts of adolescence. So the biological, emotional, blah, 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 you can read the rest yourself. And so what I think would be really helpful for you is to go through and understand that chart on page 3. And you do have a test question on that chart on page 3. Okay, the next section that we'll be looking at is the fundamental changes in adolescence, which is just basically the idea that adolescence is a universal thing. It happens in every society and every country, but they might call it something different and the results might be something different. But you look at these three aspects: the biological aspect, the cognitive, which is the brain and the thinking, and the social, which is, getting along with other people. And adolescence has changes in each of those areas universally. And that's what you'll want to look at in that section is the idea that everybody goes through biological changes. Every society does. Every society goes through cognitive changes, and every society goes through social changes in adolescence. And especially social status is a universal feature of adolescence. Okay, so let's focus on 3 of these theoretical perspectives, even though there are others and there are subheadings under them. But in general, these are the 3 most important things. So we look at biosocial theories, and theories in general are not real practical sometimes, but they give us a place to start discussing. And so biosocial, again, would be what happens physically with your body when you enter puberty and what that has to do with your adolescence. Organismic has where it takes the physical, but then also has contextual things like what's happening around you and how that affects things. Learning theories are what you learn in adolescence from reinforcement or from learning from your experiences, how that changes you. So on that section, just focus more on the biosocial. But all those 3 are important, and like I said, there are other ones all over the chapter, but these are the ones that most people know. Okay, what do you think of when someone says teenager? Yep, there are a lot of stereotypes in our society and other societies. Sometimes we think of teenagers how they're described in cartoons, out of control, yelling, making funny faces and things like that. All societies have stereotypes, and which ones do you think are accurate? What are the realities? Mostly realizing that your societal expectations are a big part of how teenagers act in your society. And teenagers have stereotypes of their own, that when they were younger, they thought, this is what I'll do as a teenager. And a lot of times that is how they actually do behave. there are a lot of stereotypes, positive and negative. And I want you to go through and find which of those do you think are accurate. Are all relationships tumultuous or not? Okay, the next part actually moves us into chapter 1, physical manifestations. If you want to get through every little hormone thing, then look on page 14 through 16, and it will walk you through it. It's pretty interesting. But instead, I want you to focus on the whole picture. So I'm not that interested in saying the GnRH neurons are activated by blah, blah, blah hormone, but just to know hormone levels change. So you want to move to more general things than specifics. But knowing hormone levels are not physical changes too. So if they ask you what a physical manifestation is, those are things like growth and how your brain itself changes. What are the sex characteristics that show? And yes, hormones change, but no, they're not a physical manifestation. Okay, the next part talks about somatic development. Somatic means relating to the body as distinct from the mind. So it's what's happening with the body. And in this section, they focus a lot on the adolescent growth spurt. And I want you to pay attention to that and to look at on page 18, what are the characteristics of growth spurts? What starts them, how they are regulated as to how much growth you have. And I want you to pay close attention to epiphysis on page 18. Okay, the next section is page 19 through 21. I want you to go over those charts on sexual development. And it seems like when you talk about puberty, sometimes the physical development is the first thing you think of. And these charts are excellent in showing step by step what's going to physically happen during puberty. And pay especially close attention to puberty in girls. Okay, what about the timing of puberty? When did you start puberty, and what things do you think affected your timing? Actually, there are so many factors that timing is so varied that it's hard to predict at all. You know that genetic and environmental forces will affect when you go into puberty, and you can't really say at this age everyone's going to do that. And so mostly you just look around you to see what's happening in your neck of the woods, your family, your environment, your socioeconomics, and that will help you, and genetics, and that will help you predict when your body will go through puberty. The fact that puberty is stressful, seems like we can all agree with that. Does puberty cause stress? Those are some of the things to think about as you read, starting on page 25. Study the effects of early maturing versus late maturing adolescents, beginning on page 30. Those are really interesting as to what happens, and the good and the bad. And the last section I want you to study begins on page 33, the obesity and eating disorders. Because this is becoming more and more a problem in our society when 20% of our adolescents are obese. So I want you to read about that on page 34 and 35, and maybe try to figure out why and do something about that so that doesn't become a problem for you. If you're ready for the test, remember, go over the top 10 topics and see if you can say important things about each one. The quiz, the test, is only 10 questions. There's a time limit of 15 minutes. Your first 4 tests are open book, and after that, they're not. So the time limit is so that you actually study ahead of time and not just sit down and hope for the best. You really have to study, take some notes, to be able to finish in the 15 minutes. So good luck. Thanks.